Shalom, welcome. This is Dan, and we're going to talk about our next Torah portion, which is tavo. This comes from Deuteronomy 26:1, goes up through 29:8. And when translated, tavo means when you come. Now, let me start by telling you a little story. I'm the kind of guy that I pick up money. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a penny, it could be a nickel, it could be a buck. If I find it on the floor, I'm the kind of guy that's going to pick it up and, put it in my stash. A couple years back, I was even doing some walking, and I found, throughout the course of the summer, I found close to about $20 just in change in the parking lot and all. So I'm the kind of guy that picks these type of things up. Well, about 15, 16, maybe 17 years ago, I was taking a walk, and I found a penny. Now, I know you're thinking, it's just a penny. This penny to me was unique. I had not seen one like this before. It was the normal Lincoln head on the front, but on the back it was a buffalo. Now, I've seen buffalo nickels, and I hadn't seen a buffalo penny, so I thought this one was unique. It was going to be worth some money. So I called up a local dealer, and I went through the phone book, called up this guy, and I said, hey, here's what I found. I found a penny, and it's got a buffalo on the back. This has got to be worth something. How much do you think it's worth? Well, his response to me was, nothing unique. I've seen these before. Most I'm going to give you for it is going to be $1. $1. Here I am thinking, okay, this is a penny I'd never seen before. It was unique to me, and he's willing to give me $1 for it. Well, all that to say, what we consider unique sometimes is not exactly what other people consider unique. I think it's in the book of 1 Timothy, I could be wrong, maybe it's in 2 Timothy, but it talks about how we are a unique people, a peculiar people. So let's talk about unique for a little bit here. If we jump into Deuteronomy 26, we see what I consider to be an if-then statement. And it says this: you are agreeing today, this is Deuteronomy 26, and it says, if you are agreeing today that Adonai is your God, and that you will follow His ways, observe His laws, His mitzvot, His commands and rulings, and do what He says. Okay, so that's kind of like the if. It doesn't say the word if, but it's kind of like the if. You are agreeing to do this. And then here comes the then. In turn, Adonai is agreeing today that you are His own unique treasure, as He promised you, that you are to observe all His mitzvot, again that means commands, and that He will raise you high above all the nations He has made, in praise, reputation, and glory that as He said, you will become a holy people for Adonai your God. So we get this if statement, what I consider the if statement, where it says you are agreeing, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then you have the then statement, and God says, basically, in turn, or because of this, or then. Now, let's look at this though, because I told you about this unique penny that I found. So let's talk about unique. The word that I find in here is the word, I'm going to spell it, it's C-A-G-U-L-L-A-H. I believe it's pronounced kagula. Alright, now I wrote down some notes here. It says we translate it not only as unique, but it's also as valued property, peculiar treasure, a jewel, or something to be possessed. Not bad possessed, but owned, possessed. So think about this. Here we have in this Deuteronomy 26 passage, we're being told in turn, or the then statement, Adonai is agreeing today that you are His own unique treasure. You are His own valued treasure, His own, the thing that He wants to possess. God's saying this to the people of Israel, but God is also saying this to us. He wants to possess us. He wants to own us as He does a peculiar piece of jewelry or something to be valued. Now, if we look on a little bit more here, there are, when I was putting my notes here, there are days when I don't feel very unique. I don't feel that I'm even worth being valued or treasured. In fact, there's probably more days that I don't than there are days that I do. And that's something I have to work through. It's something I'm having to change my thought pattern of. But it goes back to the whole thing that if we get our minds fixed on what God says, then eventually what God says is going to be inside of us. And the longest passage in the whole world is the passage between our brain and our hearts. And when we understand what God says about us and we begin to process it in our heart, then we are going to find that we do begin to consider ourselves as God's unique treasure. So here we have again, I'm just going to read the verse again. This is the whole verse. You are agreeing today that Adonai is your God, and that you will follow His ways, observe His laws, His commands and rulings, and do what He says. In turn, Adonai is agreeing today that you are His own unique treasure. This is you and I. We are His unique treasure, as He promised you that you are to observe all His commands, and that He will raise you high above all the nations He has made, in praise, reputation, and glory, and that, as He said, you will be a holy people for Adonai your God. God looks at us as being this unique thing. We're not just worth a buck. We're not even just worth a penny. We are something unique. And although it looks like a buck in my eyes, to God it was worth more. To God we are worth more. We are worth more than the value that we place on ourselves. But let's skip down here, because there's one more thing I want us to look at before we close out this portion. It comes in Deuteronomy 28 verse 2. And the verse reads, all these blessings will come upon you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. Now, I wrote down some notes here. In Deuteronomy 28, Moses challenges the people of Israel with words concerning blessing. Moses spoke that if they fully obeyed Adonai and followed His commands, that He would set His people high above the nations. We just read this. But if they continued and spoke that all the blessings of Adonai would come on the people, but then Moses continued, and spoke that all these blessings of Adonai would come on the people and accompany them. Another version says they would be overtaken by the blessings of God. So in practicality, Adonai would send His blessings to overtake those who walk in obedience to Him. Is that a definition of you and I? Are we those people who are overtaken by the blessings that God pours out? Are we living in that then statement that says that not only are we unique to God, but because we are unique and because we are loved by God and because we are doing His words, because remember it says in chapter 26 that you are to observe all the commands and that He will raise you high above. So it comes with that. We have to do the commands in order for us to be raised, in order for us to get bombarded by His blessing. We have to do our part. But it goes on here. And I go on my notes here and I'm reminded about Joseph. Let me give you an example, because this is a great one. Joseph did all that God said, no matter what was coming at him. He got blamed for things he didn't do. He got put in prison for stuff he didn't do. He was not liked by his brothers, but yet he continued to do all that God commanded. And what happened? He was moved into second in power. He was moved into a position where God put him in a place of leadership. He was blessed because he did all that God commanded him to do. So that's one example. Let's look at another one though. How about Ruth? Now, you might not think of this in the same way, but let's see. In Ruth 2:15, we see that Boaz gave orders to the other men to pull out some stalks from the bundles and leave them for Ruth to pick up. Again, we see that because Ruth was in some ways obedient, she followed what God said. She followed after the God of Naomi, and she was able to come into that agreement with the rules that the Jews had been given, that the Israelites had been given. And as such, she lived the way she allowed, as we read in this famous verse, she allowed God to be her God, the God of Naomi to be her God. And as such, God blessed her, because we see Boaz telling his men, hey, leave some straw behind for her to pick up. Leave some stuff for her to pick up. And she was blessed. And that blessing didn't stop there. The blessing continued on because she also married into that family, Boaz's family. So we see two different examples here, but they both come to the same thing, that when we do God's will and we follow His ways and we make Him our God above everyone else, above every other God that there could possibly be, and I'm so glad that we have just one God, but by making Him our priority and first in our lives, we see that He pours down blessings upon us. So here's what I want to leave you with. the two things that stuck out to me as I was reading this. One, we need to value ourselves, and we need to see ourselves as the unique piece of jewelry, the unique coin, the unique person that God has made us. He wants to possess us. He wants to bombard us with blessing. And that's the second point, is that we need to find ourselves not only doing what He says, but we need to find ourselves, or we not need to find ourselves only as being unique, but we need to find ourselves doing His will. Because in that, as we see in Deuteronomy 28, and as we see in these two other references we made mention of, God blesses those who do His will. We are unique. Do you see yourself as unique? I know I share with you, it's hard for me sometimes to see it, but according to God, we are unique. And we are something that He wants to possess. To Him, we are a fine piece of jewelry. But also, He wants to pour out His blessing on us. And He does that if we are living and walking and our statutes match His. So are we doing that? Are we those people who are blessed because we are walking in His ways? God has an immense love for us. And God has this desire that says, I want you, I desire you. You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I want you. We are the apple of His eye. Because we are, and because we do His will, He will bless us. Let that be true of us. Shalom. I'm Dan.